Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey you, listen up. If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or the go-to person in your company who is always looking for the latest and greatest software, then you need to know about Haggle. Haggle makes buying software easier. Get this. You share the details about what kind of software you're looking for, whether it's an email automation platform or a cybersecurity program, and the software vendors come to you with a personalized proposal. Everyone could use time back in their day, and finding the right software vendor to support your business can eat up an entire afternoon. Not if you use Haggle. Head to gohaggle.io and test out their beta version for free. That's gohaggle.io. Today's podcast is sponsored by RocaNews. Be the most interesting person at happy hour. How can you make that happen? Well, Roca delivers informative and engaging news without partisanship or spin. Since its launch in 2020, Roca has grown to 1.2 million daily readers. So join them by reading Roca's free, yes, free, that is our favorite word, daily newsletter designed to make you the most interesting person at happy hour in just 5 minutes. Subscribe today by clicking the link below in our show notes and go off and have a great time reading RocaNews. Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. I'm back from Boston. I spent an incredible weekend there. I talked about this in the last podcast and in my newsletter that I didn't really have a reason for going to Boston. Anytime someone would ask me why I was going, I just said just because. I just wanted to get away. So when we arrived in Boston, all of that came true. I had no plans at all. And the other exciting part was that it's a city that I absolutely don't know. I've only been to Boston one other time for a wedding that I worked as a bridesmaid for hire. And I came back to this city and it felt brand new because I truly didn't know the way around. On Friday when we got there, Adam had to work. So I had the entire afternoon to myself. And ironically, one of my good friends from New York also happened to be in Boston that weekend. And her fiance was also working. So we decided to meet up, and I think it was around like 1 p.m., and we spent between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. just walking in circles around the city. She knew Boston a little bit better than I did, so we just sort of went on an adventure and we talked and talked and talked. We sat at this really cool old school Italian restaurant and had cherry sodas and biscottis, and it was a great way of getting to know the city. Was with a friend who also hardly knew it, and just by walking in circles. I love a city that you can just walk around in with no game plan in mind. That's why I'm so attracted to New York City, is because you don't have to know what you want to do on a Saturday. You just get up, you go for a walk, and you enter all of these different worlds. And that's how Boston felt as well. We ate so much in Boston. There's a famous cannoli place called Mike's Cannoli, and I am the kind of person who is a big gift giver. Even if I don't have anyone to get a gift for, I still like to buy the gifts. I remember when I was younger, I had this aunt, and when we would go to visit this aunt, she would open up a drawer in her room that was just filled with all these different gifts, and she would pull one out and give it to you as if she was holding on to it forever just to give to you. But really, it was just like a treasure chest of gifts that she would give to people who came to visit her. I don't know why that has stuck with me, but that is who I am as a person. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have 2 closets in this whole apartment. One closet has a box in it of like random things I've acquired over the years to eventually hopefully give other people. Like if I'm at a cool store or I'm in a cool city and I see awesome things that I don't need or I don't really want for myself, I'll buy them, sometimes just to support the business, and then gift them to people over the years. I am like a huge gift giver. It's my love language. I'm not necessarily a gift receiver. I don't really care if people get me gifts. I don't really want gifts, but I love to give gifts. So I realized, okay, there's this famous pastry shop. If you know Boston, you know it. It's called Mike's Cannolis. And I decided, okay, I'm going to get a ton of cannolis and bring it back to people. I'm going to get a box of cannolis for me, a box for one friend, and a box for another friend. And I walked in there and I was like, okay, I don't want to get them just one cannoli each. I want to get a box per person. And I figured a dozen would be too much, but a half a dozen, 6 is probably the right amount. So I walk in there and I'm like, okay, I want 3 boxes of 6 cannolis each. And I see a sign and the sign says cash only. And I'm going through my wallet and I have $20 in cash. And I'm like, that should be enough, right? Like how much could 18 cannolis be? Like I'm guessing they're $1 each. So $20 is more than enough. All of a sudden Adam comes in and he's like, what are you doing? How much are you buying? And I'm like, oh, I just bought like 18 cannolis. And he's like, 18 cannolis? Like, do you realize, Jen, that they are $5 each? And he immediately springs into action. Number one, he's like a little annoyed that I spent $90 on cannolis. But number two, he's like, we don't have that much cash. He goes through his wallet. He has some cash, but it's not enough. It's a Sunday morning at like 7 a.m., so it's not like there's a ton of open ATMs around, and we don't know where the nearest ATM is. You would think this cannoli place would have one, but no, they don't. He ends up like running around the city, finding an ATM. I'm standing in the store waiting to pay for the $90 worth of cannolis I just bought, and he comes back with the money. And in that moment, I realized I made a huge mistake. I should have not gotten so many cannolis. I don't have enough people to give 18 cannolis to. And I should have checked the price before I ordered. Or I should have just said, hey, sorry, I don't want 18. And I just felt in that moment like sad. And I felt regretful. And I felt like really angry that I had just spent all of this money. I don't have like $90 to just spend on cannolis. Like I don't think really most people do. And I was just like, oh my God, like I feel really bad right now. And the last thing I need is for Adam to make me feel bad. I don't need him to like berate me over the fact that I made this mistake. And I just like want to pretend this never happened. Like I just want to literally eat this mistake and then pass it along as a gift to my friends. So I literally said to him, I'm like, this was so stupid. I did not see the sign. I feel like horrible about it, but can we just like laugh about it? And we did. Luckily, he didn't make me feel bad. Luckily, he actually never made me repay him for the money, which I should probably do. And we just laughed about it. And it sort of became like this inside joke. And that made me feel really good. Because you know when you're feeling really bad about yourself and you know that you made a mistake. Like you know you made this mistake, but the last thing you want is for somebody to call you out on that mistake and make you feel worse. Because you're already like feeling horrible about yourself. You don't want anyone else to make you feel that way. Luckily, he dropped it. He didn't make me feel that way. And now $90 on cannolis is something we will never, ever, ever forget. I had 6 of them in my fridge. And I should also tell you, like, these are not like bite-sized cannolis. These are not mini cannolis. These cannolis are massive. Like, you can probably split one with 3 people and everybody would have their fair share. So we had 6 in our fridge, and because I felt like I had to get my money's worth, I literally was eating them 3 times a day. Like I would have 1 cannoli a day. I'd split it into thirds and I'd eat it, which is fine. Like you should eat cannolis, but after a while I was like, okay, I can't do this for 6 days straight. I'm actually sick of these cannolis. So I started to individually package them and hand them out to people in my neighborhood just because I had to get them out of the fridge. So if you visit Boston, definitely head to Mike's Pastry or Mike's Cannoli, whatever it is. Get yourself a cannoli. Do not get yourself 18. So Boston was fun. It was definitely hard coming back to New York City. I love New York. I'm happy here, but we just had so much fun in Boston. We even hired, because we brought Goofy with us, we hired a babysitter one day to watch Goofy so that Adam and I could run around the city without having to worry about her. If you don't know Goofy, you should know that Goofy cannot be home by herself. She just barks and cries the entire time. So we hired this babysitter. What I loved about this babysitter is I noticed we found her on Rover, which is like a dog walking, dog sitting app. And we noticed that, number one, her price point was way lower than everybody else. Like everybody else was like $100 for the day and she was $35. So usually I'm like, I don't want to go with the cheapest option. I want to hire someone who I can trust to watch Goofy. But, you know, I spent $90 on Cannolis, so I felt like, okay, let's see what kind of discount we can get here. So she had 2 reviews. And the reviews were like pretty vague. And I was like, okay, she has 2 reviews. They're pretty vague. Let's just try it out. If she comes over to watch Goofy and I sense like bad energy or I don't trust her, we'll just tell her something came up and we'll like pay her the money and she'll leave. So she comes to our hotel. I meet her in the lobby. And when I see her in the lobby, she is so nervous to meet me. She is just so nervous. She's probably, I'm going to say like maybe 23. Just so nervous. And I noticed that and I'm like, oh, this is like my moment to thrive because I love making people feel comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So I instantly say hello. I tell her how excited we are to meet her. I share that Goofy is like so much fun to hang out with. And instantly she's like, okay, I'm going to be honest with you. This is my first time doing this. And I was like, this is fantastic. I just got this good vibe from her. I instantly liked her. And I liked how this was her first time doing it. She told me that she found out about Rover and this side hustle on TikTok. And I was like, oh my God, like you're speaking my language. This is like the kind of stuff I live for. And I was like, wait, this is the first time you've done this and you have 2 reviews. And she's like, yeah, I got my parents to leave those reviews just to sort of showcase that I've had dogs in the past and I'm responsible. And I was like, I just want to tell you how much I respect you and how much I think you are awesome. Because so many people want to do something. They want to start a side hustle. They want to put themselves out there, but they don't because they feel like they don't have experience or they don't know where to start. And this girl, she sees something on TikTok and she gets her parents involved. And the next thing you know, she's watching my dog Goofy for $35 to get herself out there. And I absolutely loved that. The people who are like, you know what? I'm not going to let any excuse stop me from trying and stop me from actually doing something that interests me. So of course, I just like instantly overwhelmed this woman with praise and excitement. And I was probably like a little bit too much, but she watched Goofy. Everything was fine. I was hoping to continue my unofficial coaching with her, but after we came home, she just like left. I think she was like, probably felt awkward hanging out and, you know, I could be a little bit too much as well. So, I don't know. I loved that whole situation. I really respected this young woman who wanted to make some side cash. And I was like, Adam, we have to leave her like this outstanding superlative review so that she can raise her prices and that she can get a ton of bookings. So if you're in Boston and you need a dog sitter, hit me up. I will pass along her profile on Rover and you should hire her. I mean, I fully am so happy for this person and I love a person who does a cool side hustle. I was listening to someone else's podcast and I've recently become obsessed with this idea of rebalancing your hormones. Now, I'm not here to give medical advice. I am not a doctor and I don't ever want to be a doctor, but I am obsessed with this idea of balancing your hormones. I did one of those hormone tests a couple of years ago and saw that my hormones were off balance, which can cause so many issues in your body like acne and all of these things. So I've become really obsessed with learning how to rebalance my hormones naturally. And I was listening to this podcast and she mentioned something called seed cycling. And then when I Googled it, there's this whole thing called seed cycling where the first half of your menstrual cycle, which is like the first 14, 16 days, depending on who you are and your cycle, you're supposed to eat 2 kinds of seeds, like a tablespoon of each seed. You're supposed to eat flax seeds and pumpkin seeds. And then the second 14 or 16 days of your cycle, you're supposed to cycle it with sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. And these seeds are supposed to help do other things to your body to help balance your hormones. I don't know if this is interesting to you. I'm just learning about this and I'm trying it out. This is my first month. And I'll keep you posted, but if you've ever heard of seed cycling before, or you want me to do a whole episode on it and bring on an expert, send me an email, send me a DM, let me know. It's just something that I'm currently fascinated with because I love studying hormones and how to balance them and how you can take all these natural supplements or switch up your diet and how you eat to make changes happen in your body. I am somebody who does not eat healthy. I don't eat unhealthy, but I just am very regiment with what I eat. Like I eat the same 4 things. And I'm really trying to figure out what other things I can incorporate into my diet to help make changes happen in my body. Changes with my skin, changes with my mood, changes with how I can handle stress better. Like food does help a lot of these things. Might not cure a lot of these things, but it can help. So this is just something that I'm fascinated with that I wanted to tell you about. Okay, let's dive in to today's episode. Today's episode is something that I really have been thinking about for a while, and it's the power of just saying yes to things. Like sometimes we have opportunities happen in our lives, or people just ask to hang out with us, and we think through whether or not we should say yes. My friend Molly has a newsletter out there called Future Monster, and she shared this really interesting Twitter thread in the newsletter. And the Twitter thread is all about how we don't have that many more times in our life that we can say yes to certain things. So the Twitter thread, and I'll share it in the show notes here, is about how this guy realizes, like, when his friends ask him to hang out, there's only a limited more amount of times that this will happen in his potential lifetime. Because number one, maybe the friendship will start to fade away, or the people will move away, or, life is short kind of thing. And it got me thinking about all of the things in my life that I have limited quantities left with. Like, how many more mornings am I going to have snuggling in bed with Goofy? And how many more times are Adam and I going to dance around this small apartment? And how many more times am I going to get to travel to Florida and see my parents? And all of these things put your life into perspective. How many more times can you do these things? And when you start to look at your life like that, it starts to add a lot more value. Rather than just watching a Netflix show constantly every night of the week, or rather than putting off seeing friends because I just don't want to go into the city and travel to see them, or not going on trips to see my parents, and all of these things that I want to do but I find excuses for. Just remind me, how many more times will we get to actually do these things? It's a powerful way to live your life, and I'm not saying this to stress you out and make you say yes to everything, because that's not good either, but it certainly helps you evaluate what is important to you. And more than that, more than that, it tells you one thing: that when you're in these moments, whatever moment it is, whether it's lunch with a friend or seeing your parents or hugging your dog, you have to do it fully, 100% fully present, because you don't know how many more moments like that you're going to get. Yet we take those small moments in our life for granted, as if we have a million more. I don't know how many more moments you have. I don't know how many more moments I have, but I can tell you it's not a million. Maybe it's a couple thousand if you're lucky, or maybe a few hundred if you're lucky, or maybe just a few if you're lucky. But either way, when we start to view our life like this, it puts in perspective what we want to do more of, what we want to say yes to, and what we want to stop doing that's holding us back from these moments. So what are your moments? What are those things that you say no to, but you want to say yes to? Or you don't put enough effort into doing because you don't know how many more moments like those you have. And once you start to look at it like that, limited quantity, it absolutely changes how you show up in your own life. Take a look at this Twitter thread and let me know what you think, because it is so powerful when we start to look at our life like it's going out of stock. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.